So Pittsburgh is 1 win away. I'm wearing Columbus, got the jersey and the hat, because that's where they started. Start of the playoffs, I said Washington, and under my breath I was like, but Pittsburgh. And people said, and it was even Pittsburgh fans said, but without Letang, can they still do it? And now there's an article up on TSN about how the Penguins are proving you don't need a dominant defenseman to win a Stanley Cup. It helps when you have the amount of offensive weapons they have and 2 really, really solid goaltenders. Plus, last time I looked, the defensemen they have, while they may be unheralded, they've done a very good job. No, they haven't had Letang. Letang has played no role in the Penguins' playoff fortunes thus far. But I'm telling you, this team has a very good defense core. I've been very impressed with Mata. Daly's playing the best hockey of his career. Justin Schultz is proving that he's a viable top 2 candidate somewhere. And I'm telling you, when you're going into free agency, you want to be proving that. That's why when I see people saying, well, he'll take a $3 to $3.5 million deal to stay in Pittsburgh. Maybe. But he's already proving that he can lead a blue line on a team that's going to a Stanley Cup. I don't know how low he's going to go with that total. Yeah, he's not the key reason, but he's part of it. Just like Mata is, just like Daly is. And Hainsey has played a role in it. It's been an impressive run. And while we all, at the start of this series, discussed the top 4 that Nashville had, and how Nashville's defense is one of the best in the league, and it still is, you can't take away from what Pittsburgh's doing. You just can't. We can discuss penalties till we're blue in the face, and we can discuss whether referees are cheering for one team or another. I don't think they are. I just want to come right out and say it. I've complained about the referees blowing the whistle when Penguins go down while the other team has the puck, because throughout the rest of the season it's been, if a player gets hurt on a play, you don't blow the whistle until his team has the puck, just in case of embellishment and that kind of thing. If that's changed, I never saw a memo from the NHL about it. I haven't seen anything about a directive given to the officials that they're going to just blow the whistle anytime anybody gets hurt. I don't have a problem with it necessarily, as long as it's called across the board. The only potential problem I have with it is every time a player gets knocked down, you're going to blow the whistle. This game already has a lot of whistles. There's a lot of icings in the game right now. And in terms of flow, if the NHL could figure out a way to do something about so many icings, especially in the last few minutes of a game where a team's holding on by a goal, it can get really boring. But I digress. The Penguins have probably the best core of forwards that I've seen in decades, I want to say. When Connor Sheary is kind of buried on the team and kind of a forgotten guy, after what he did last year, Brian Rust, he's been big and key in some games, invisible other times, and injured other times. And you can bring guys in, pull guys out. Jake Gensel, all kinds of goals. We're talking about him for Conn Smythe, 3 games ago? And now everybody's looking at Crosby again. People look at Malkin for the amount of points he's putting up. Kessel suddenly started scoring again. There are so many weapons on this team. I think it is possible for a team to win a Stanley Cup without a dominant defenseman. I look back at the 2011 Canucks, and if they had won Game 7 against Boston, they would have won a Stanley Cup where their best offensive defenseman would have been Christian Ehrhoff. And I loved what Ehrhoff did with the Canucks, and he had great chemistry there, but he was not a top 2 defenseman. And you had Edler and a bunch of other guys, and you had Aaron Rome in the top 6. You can argue about whether or not that was Alain Vigneault, but either way. Game 7 wasn't lost for Vancouver in 2011 because they didn't have a dominant defenseman. It was lost because the entire team didn't respond well to any sort of adversity. It was like as soon as Boston scored, they went, well, we're done. And it was done. Now, I look at Pittsburgh, and I don't think, let's just say they lose tomorrow. Let's say Nashville beats them. And then in Game 6, Nashville does the impossible, in our eyes anyways, and wins in Pittsburgh. Does that detract from what Pittsburgh's done without Letang? Not in my eyes. But again, I think of things a little differently. I don't just look at the championship. I look at the runner-up, and I see what they've done and what kind of roster they have. And I don't think, in some cases, there's a huge difference between the champion and the runner-up. The 82 Canucks, ironically, are the greatest example of that. The Islanders were way up here, and the Canucks they didn't belong on the ice with them. And the 83 Stanley Cup between between the Islanders and Edmonton, the first time they met, the Islanders took the Oilers out to the woodshed. The Oilers learned, changed their game plan, came back and won it in 84. But for the runner-up in this series, Nashville, Pittsburgh, it's likely Nashville. And I don't think I'm starting any fights by saying it's likely Nashville's not going to win the Stanley Cup. They're down 3-2, and history would dictate it's probably over in 7 at the very least. But even if Nashville overcame the odds, it does not diminish what Pittsburgh's done without Letang. And it's why I look at expansion or upcoming free agency and say, well, if they lose Bonino, I can say that because I know Pittsburgh's able to replenish their ranks at all times. Pittsburgh and Chicago sort of mirror each other that way, in that they may look one year in the playoffs like they're lost. And Pittsburgh, right now, they're on the verge of back-to-back Stanley Cups, and everybody loves them, and everybody talks about how great they were. But in between that first Stanley Cup and that second Stanley Cup, there were a number of years of doubt. There was a lot of doubt with Marc-Andre Fleury for, I think it was 3 playoffs in a row that he was terrible. And, you can't win with Fleury. There was some talk about Crosby's leadership at certain points, and because of health issues, maybe he's not the player he once was. And yet, here we are. And that's why I don't write off Chicago either. There's plenty of people saying, well, Chicago's lost 2 years in a row in the first round, so they're done. Okay, or you look at what Pittsburgh did, and they turned it around. It's all about whether or not a GM can replenish the roster. And what Pittsburgh did at the deadline, in bringing in Daly and Hainsey, and in bringing in defensemen when people are like, Pittsburgh doesn't need defensemen, it worked. It absolutely worked. It was brilliant. And it's for that reason why when they talk about GM of the Year, and GM of the Year's, going to go out as an award and at the award show, and everybody's going to make this big deal of it, I'm sorry, Pittsburgh's GM did a fantastic, masterful job this year of avoiding what every other team for 20 years has gone through, and it looks like they're back-to-back champions. And you don't win that second championship without some great moves made by your general manager. And it also speaks a lot to the energy and the stamina and the overall health of a guy like Sidney Crosby. Earlier in the playoffs, I'm criticizing that he's playing when I think he might be concussed. Right now, I look at the amount of hockey he's playing and the fact he's still playing big minutes. His fitness level is crazy. I've said for years, he looks a lot like Tom Welling, who played Clark Kent on Smallville. And I'm starting to think maybe Sidney Crosby is Superman. He might be Clark Kent. Takes off the glasses and he becomes Sidney Crosby, not Superman, but it's damn close. Because the things this guy can do when he's taking the hits he takes, and the slashes and the bumps and the bruises, and I know people are going to mention his dirty tactics and whatever, that's fine. But the fact that he can play as well as he does with the abuse that he takes, he dishes it out too, I know. I can hear them. I can hear the people. It is a testament to his ability. And through his leadership and the team being built the way it has been by Ray Shero over the last couple of years, that's why you can lose a Letang and still have a Stanley Cup champion. Whether I am a huge fan of it or I'm going to cheer when that moment happens, it doesn't matter. But I will give kudos where it's due. And the Penguins have done a really solid job this year. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And thank you so much for watching, each and every one of you. A big tip of the hat to a Terry Garcia. And a big thanks to him as well for some support that's been done that blew my mind. So I will talk to you guys again tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching, and keep tuning in, keep sharing. I've seen a lot of sharing of videos lately, and thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. The growth going on right now is blowing me away, and it will enable me very soon to start really doing the things I've dreamt of doing with this channel from day one. And I owe all of you for that. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you guys again tomorrow.